My name is Jonathan Miles. I am 72 years old, and I live in Mobile, Alabama. For more than 4 decades, I have been a missionary. I have spent much of my life in forgotten villages in Latin America and war-torn regions of Africa, preaching, helping, and healing with the little I had. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced that Sunday morning. It was an ordinary day. I was sitting on the porch, as I had done since I retired. The coffee was still warm, and the June sky held that golden light that only the southern United States can offer. I was reading my Bible, as I always did, when I felt a pain, a dry, deep pain that pierced my chest like an arrow. I tried to get up, but my legs gave out. Everything was spinning. I only remember the cup falling, shattering on the floor, and the muffled sound of my body collapsing onto the wood. After that, silence. I woke up for seconds inside the ambulance. I saw the white roof, the red lights spinning, and I heard distant voices shouting my name. "Mr. Miles, stay with us. Jonathan, can you hear me?" But I was already leaving. I felt my body become light. Something was different. I no longer felt pain. In fact, I no longer felt anything, neither cold nor heat, just a peace so intense, so deep, that it brought tears to my eyes even when I was out of my body. Yes, outside my body. Because there on that gurney I could still see myself, my pale face, the paramedics pressing on my chest, the defibrillator being charged, but I was above the scene, floating, watching. Life suddenly seemed like a silent theater, and I, the spectator. It was then that something strange happened. A whisper, my name, but said in a way I'd never heard before. It wasn't a man's voice nor a woman's. It was something greater, something eternal. Jonathan. When I heard that, I knew my journey was just beginning. If this story has touched you in any way, if you feel that there is something beyond this life, subscribe to the channel and leave your like now. This helps me continue telling my story and awakening more hearts. The whisper kept echoing. It wasn't a sound, it was something inside me, as if every cell in my soul knew it was being called, by someone who had always known me. Suddenly, everything around me disappeared. The ambulance, the doctors, my body, everything was gone. I was surrounded by an absolute void. No walls, no ground, no time. But strangely, I didn't feel afraid. There was a kind of warmth there, as if that void understood me better than anyone else. The only thing that existed was consciousness. I knew who I was. I knew where I had been. I knew I had died. But at the same time, I had forgotten everything that worried me. Bills, illnesses, pain, longing. Everything seemed small, almost ridiculous, as if life on earth was just one part of a much bigger story, and we there were too busy to see it. Then a feeling began to form. I can't quite explain it. It was as if the air, if you can call it air, had a texture, as if the space around me was alive. It was then that I felt something different approaching. I didn't see it with my eyes, because I didn't have eyes, but I noticed. It was like when you feel like someone is looking at you even without seeing them. And then the light appeared, first as a distant dot, then slowly expanding, like the sun rising in slow motion. But that light didn't hurt my eyes. On the contrary, it attracted me, as if it were made of love, a love so intense that I started to cry, tears of the soul, if that makes sense. Every part of me was being read, scanned, understood. No judgment, no shame. The light saw me completely, and yet it loved me. It was at that moment that I realized I was not alone. A presence was with me. It wasn't an angel with wings like the pictures depict. It wasn't visible at all, but it was real, and it was holy. You knew. That presence spoke again, now more clearly, still without words but with meaning. Jonathan, Vem. I went, not with my feet, but with what was left of me. I went as someone who surrenders, as someone who returns home. I went, without hesitation. That presence drew me with a force that was not physical. It was spiritual, emotional, essential. The light expanded as I approached, and the closer I got, the more I felt complete. There was no more loneliness, no more guilt, no more weight. It was like returning to one's mother's lap after a long war. But this mother was something infinitely greater. It was origin. It was eternity. The light enveloped me, not aggressively. It embraced me, but not with arms. It was like being enveloped in a feeling you have never experienced in life, a love that demands nothing in return, a love that knows you deeply, even in your worst moments, and still embraces you. In this embrace of light, everything I thought was important lost its meaning. The trophies I had accumulated, the meaningless arguments, the times I had been too harsh with those who loved me, everything seemed like dust. I said nothing, but the light answered, "I know every one of these pains, and I have carried them with you forever." These words were not heard, they were felt, as if the truth had entered straight into the heart of my soul. Then the presence began to change, as if it took shape, not visible to the eyes, but visible to the essence. And when the light finally revealed itself, I knew without a doubt who was there. It was Jesus, but not the Jesus of the paintings, nor the one I preached in church services. This was the living Jesus, real, immense, infinite, and yet so close that it seemed he could hold my hand. He didn't need to say his name, you knew. The soul recognizes who created it. Jesus looked at me with eyes that were not eyes, and in that look, I saw everything that I am. I saw my childhood, my sins, my joys, my failures, my regrets, and I saw them all forgiven with a simple touch of presence. He told me, "You were always mine." At that moment, my inner world burst into tears. Tears that I didn't even know had been there for so many years. It was as if every wounded part of me was being healed, as if I was remade. And then, Jesus showed me something. He pointed, not with his finger but with a gesture of intent, to a sort of window in the void, and he said to me, "Now you will see what many refused to see." I trembled, because I understood that I was about to see the future of humanity. The window before me was not made of glass. It was made of time, space, reality. I can't explain it, but I could see through it as if I were looking at the world through the eyes of God. And then Jesus spoke. His voice was like thunder and melody at the same time. It wasn't loud, but it pierced me completely. It wasn't aggressive, but it dismantled me with its truth. Each word carried not only sound but meaning, deep, absolute. He said, "The future of humanity is being shaped by the choices of the present, and many do not realize that they are walking away from me." And then I saw it. Images appeared in the window. They were not pretty sights. I saw great cities collapsing, people running in despair. I saw civil wars. I saw famines. I saw natural disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes, fires raging out of control. But what frightened me most was the emptiness in people's eyes. It was as if faith had disappeared from the earth. Jesus explained to me, technology connects them, but separates them. Information feeds them, but confuses them. Freedom liberates them, but also enslaves them. Those words echoed inside me, and I wanted to cry. He continued, "Many people think I'm distant, but I've never been so close. They just don't know how to listen to me anymore." And at that moment, he showed me empty churches, but he also showed me small groups in homes, people alone praying on their knees with sincerity. And then he said, "Where there is a sincere heart, there I am." Then I saw hungry children. I saw desperate parents. I saw politicians playing with the fate of nations as if they were pieces in a game. And I asked in my mind, "Lord, is there still hope?" Jesus looked at me, and in that look there was pain, but also hope, and said, "As long as there is life, there is hope, but time is growing short." These words chilled my soul. Time is running out. I don't know if it was the end of the world as we imagined, or the end of something inside us, but I understood there that what would come next would require faith, unity, and awakening. Jesus looked at me once more, and with a sweet but non-negotiable firmness he said, "They need to choose, and they need to choose now." Jesus extended his hand, or perhaps it was just a gesture of his presence, and the window expanded. Now it didn't just show images, it showed me within of them. I was thrown into the midst of humanity's pain, not as a spectator, but as one who feels every tear as if it were his own. I felt the hunger of a child in Bangladesh, the agony of a mother in Syria burying her son, the desperation of a homeless man in Detroit trying to survive yet another freezing night. Every pain, every silent cry, every forgotten request. I felt it all, and then I understood. Jesus carries this pain every day. The weight of the world, which we think is invisible, is on his shoulders every second. His presence whispered, They think I'm far away, but I'm in every scream that goes unheard, in every tear shed in the dark. I'm with them, even when they don't know it. I cried, because I realized how quick we are to blame God, but slow to take responsibility for our choices. I saw people hating each other because of politics, race, religion. I saw brothers drifting apart, families falling apart, homes being destroyed by words left unsaid, and forgiveness left ungranted. And I felt, God's pain, yes. God feels pain, not because he is weak, but because he loves. And true love suffers when it sees the one it loves getting hurt. Jesus then showed me something even more profound. I saw people's inner selves, their thoughts, their wounds, their secret struggles, people smiling on the outside and screaming on the inside, people who feel invisible, people who feel forgotten by God, but whom he never stops seeing. I saw tired pastors. I saw young people with addictions. I saw lonely elderly people looking out the window waiting for a visit that never comes. And again he said, they need to come back to me, not to a religion, tome, for love, for truth. The world's pain was not just physical, it was spiritual, a growing emptiness within people, a distancing from their essence. And then for the first time I felt something different coming from the light. It was sadness, but not despair. It was a silent lament. Like a father who sees his children going astray and still loves them, Jesus then whispered, but there is still hope. The pain still enveloped me. I was emotionally exhausted, as if I had cried for 1,000 different souls. But it was at that moment, when I thought all was lost, that Jesus showed me another window. And there I saw something different. A woman alone, kneeling on the cold bathroom floor, praying silently. A young man in New York, holding an old Bible on the subway, reading with eyes full of questions. A couple on a Texas farm gather their children to pray before dinner, even though they don't know if they'll have anything to eat the next day. Small gestures, small lights, but those lights shone with a strength that tore through the darkness. Jesus said, they don't make the headlines, but they are the ones who sustain the world. And then I understood. God doesn't expect crowds. He expects sincerity. He listens to the lonely, the forgotten, the ones no one applauds. I saw nurses singing hymns in hospitals. I saw a prisoner reading the Psalms with tears. I saw a boy in a wheelchair smiling at the sky without asking for anything in return. And Jesus showed me something even deeper. I saw silent acts of kindness. A man pushing a stranger's broken-down car, a woman leaving food on an elderly neighbor's doorstep, a police officer kneeling beside a lost child, holding his hand until his parents arrive. And then he said, every act of love is a seed that I will not let die. Those images warmed me. It was as if the very heart of the world was still beating. Weak, yes, but alive. Then Jesus said something I will never forget. Darkness does not overcome light. It only screams louder. Those words cut me, but they also healed me, because I realized there is still time. There is still faith. There are still people who believe, even without understanding everything. People who love even without receiving anything. People who, even when tired, remain firm. If you are listening to this now and feel that is part of this silent hope, write a phrase of faith here in the comments. It can be a prayer, a verse, or just an I still believe. Your light can reach someone who is in the dark right now. And maybe that's exactly what Jesus is waiting for. Hope still burned within me as Jesus approached once more. His gaze had changed. There was still love, but now there was also urgency. It was as if he was about to entrust me with something that few were ready to hear. Jonathan, he said in a firm voice, time is not only running out, it is being ignored. Those words pierced me. The hope that had just been born was confronted by a warning that demanded action. And then Jesus led me into another vision, but this time it was not in silence. It was as if the whole sky was in motion. I saw clocks melting like wax, cities being swallowed by water and flames. I saw the sky darken in broad daylight. I saw crowds running, not from something, but from themselves. Desperate people, looking for answers in the wrong places. Science collapsing in the face of events it could not explain. Faith being mocked in schools, and the name of God being forgotten. Jesus looked at me and said, man is building his own Tower of Babel again. And just like before, it will fall. Then I saw it. I saw the leaders of the world making secret cold deals, thinking only of power. I saw people stuck on screens, hypnotized, unable to look each other in the eye. I saw churches full of empty people and empty bars with hearts full of pain. But the worst was when Jesus showed me the children, so exposed, so manipulated, so forgotten. He said, "When the little ones are corrupted, the big ones reap misfortune." The sky seemed to tremble at this sentence, and then with a force that was not of sound but of eternity, he proclaimed, "The hour of awakening has come. Those who hear my call will live, but those who reject the truth will be lost while they are still alive." I wanted to ask, "Sir, what should we do?" But before the question could be formed, he answered, "Return to love, return to humility, break your pride, rebuild your homes, seek me in silence, and I will speak. Seek me in tears, and I will console, but ignore me, and you will reap the silence of heaven." It was the first time I felt what God's silence was. It wasn't a punishment. It was a consequence. It was like seeing an open door being ignored by someone who prefers the dark hallway. Jesus took a few steps away, but his voice echoed like thunder in my soul. "The next decade will be decisive. Great shocks will come, but my people will know what to do, because I will guide them." I was shaking, but not out of fear, out of responsibility. The world was on the brink of something immense, not just physical, but spiritual. An invisible war was raging, and few were prepared. Before I finished, Jesus turned to me once more. His eyes seemed to contain all the oceans and all the pains of humanity, and he said with a strong and cutting tenderness, "You must tell this. You must warn, because many may still wake up before it is too late." After the warning, there was silence. But not an ordinary silence. It was a sacred space, as if even the angels had stopped to listen to what was coming next. Jesus looked at me, and his presence was different now. There was no longer just urgency. There was a kind of quiet ache, like someone who has tried everything, and now leaves the decision to someone else. "Jonathan," he said, "heaven has spoken. The signs have been given. The time is now, choice." And then he stretched out his arm. Before us appeared two trails, a wide paved area full of lights, music, parties, people smiling, drinking, chasing fame, power, pleasure. Everything seemed beautiful, but there was something strange. The faces changed quickly. Laughter turned into emptiness. Music turned into noise. And in the background, there was darkness. The other trail was narrow, almost hidden, full of rocks. Few followed it, but there was something different about them. A sparkle in their eyes, a silence full of peace. And in the background, a light that grew. Jesus said, "Everyone sees both paths, but not everyone has the courage to choose the right one, because the right one demands renunciation, and the wrong one demands only distraction." I wanted to ask, "But why doesn't the Lord intervene? Why doesn't he stop everything?" And he answered, "Because love is only love if it is a choice, and I will never force anyone to love me." Those words hurt, but they made sense. He continued, "There are those who seek me only to escape hell, but those who know me seek me because they love the truth." Then I saw men and women fighting against themselves. People who fall, but get up. People who make mistakes, but keep trying. And Jesus smiled at them, like a father who rejoices not in perfection, but in sincere effort. I also saw others, people who knew the truth, but rejected it. Out of pride, out of fear, out of attachment. They want the kingdom, but they don't want the king. Those words stuck with me. Jesus took me to one last place, a huge hall, in it thousands of doors. Each door, a soul. Some were ajar, others were completely open, but there were doors locked with chains and padlocks. And he said, "I knock always, but I will only enter if they open it from the inside." At that moment I understood something that changed my faith. God is sovereign, but he chose to respect human free will until the end. He could force, impose, prove, but he prefers to love. Wait, call, because true love doesn't invade, it invites. And then, in a firm, sweet voice, Jesus asked me a question, and through me he now asks it of you who are listening. What will be your choice? After Jesus showed me the paths and spoke about each person's choice, I realized that the time for doubt was over. He then turned to me with a different countenance. There was no longer sadness in his gaze, nor even that gentle compassion. There was authority. that of a king who loves deeply, but who also rules with justice. "Jonathan," he said, "now you will see the signs." And before us, time began to move like a sped-up movie. It was as if I were watching years pass in seconds. I saw the world entering a period of acceleration. Everything seemed to be moving faster. The news, the conflicts, the changes. It was as if the earth was rushing, but without knowing where. I saw increasingly extreme weather events. I saw nations collapsing internally. I saw leaders being exposed. And I saw something worse. The spirit of division spreading. Divided families, divided churches, divided people, all revolving around an inflamed ego and a superficial faith. Jesus then said, "The beginning of the end will not be a bang, but a collective weariness of the human soul." Those words broke me inside, because that was exactly what I was already beginning to feel, a worldwide exhaustion, as if everyone was living on autopilot, waiting for something, but not knowing what. That's when I saw something even scarier. A darkness was hovering over the nations. It was not night, it was spiritual, an invisible veil that covered the eyes and hardened the hearts. I saw young people who no longer knew who they were. I saw old people losing faith in the future. I saw a generation connected to the world, but disconnected from itself. And then Jesus said, "Everything that can be shaken will be shaken." He explained that the shakings would not come to destroy, but to reveal. That many of the systems we trust, economics, politics, religion, would be exposed, and that only that which is built on love, truth, and faith would remain standing. The time is near, Jonathan, not because the end has come, but because the moment of truth is coming. These words burned into my spirit. Then I saw groups forming, small communities of faith, ordinary people coming together not to discuss theology, but to pray, to help each other, to live in simplicity. I saw the gospel being lived as it was in the beginning, without stages, without fame, only with truth. Jesus smiled as he showed this. As long as there is living faith, there will be resistance to darkness. Finally, he approached me, and in a softer, almost fatherly tone, he said, "You must return, Jonathan. Tell them that the time is near, that there is still a chance, but that no one can delay the call any longer. The time is now." And in that instant, the light began to move away, and I knew my journey there was about to end. I didn't want to leave. Being there in the presence of Jesus was everything my soul had ever sought. It was like finally finding home after a lifetime of wandering. But I noticed. The light was beginning to recede. Jesus looked at me with tenderness, a tenderness that only someone who loves perfectly can show, and in that look, I understood. There was something that still needed to be done. "Lord," my soul whispered, "please let me stay." He came closer. He touched my essence with something that was not a hand, but pure presence. And he said, "Jonathan, you've seen it. Now you have to tell it. The seed I planted in you is not meant to be kept. It's meant to be spread." It was as if something inside me broke. The desire to stay there in that invisible paradise was so strong, but the call to the mission was deeper. He continued, "There are people who will only listen if you are the one speaking. There are hearts that will only awaken deal with what you saw." Then Jesus showed faces, people I didn't know yet, young people, old people, entire families. I saw tears falling from eyes that were still in the future. And I understood. Every word I would carry from there would save someone who didn't even know how much they needed to hear it. "It's not the end, Jonathan," he said. "It's rebirth." At that moment, everything began to dissolve. The light became a breeze. The sacred scene began to fade away like a dream that gives way to awakening. But before disappearing completely, Jesus told me something that echoes to this day. "Tell them that I still talk, that I still hope, that I still love." And with those words I felt an impulse, as if I was being forcefully pulled back into the physical world. A whirlwind of light enveloped me, and everything spun. The pain returned, the sound of machines, the white light of the hospital, hurried voices, and the sound of my own heart beating again. I opened my eyes with difficulty, and there, in a hospital bed in Mobile, Alabama, I knew I was back, but he was no longer the same man. When I opened my eyes, everything seemed strange. The hospital lights blinded me for a moment. The sound of the machines, the nurses' hurried footsteps, the beeping monitors. Everything was real, physical, harsh, and at the same time, everything seemed smaller than before, as if I had come back from a place so big that the world now fit into a shoebox. I heard voices. "He's waking up. Jonathan, can you hear me?" I felt the touch of hands on my arm, heard the hum of machines adjusting to my return, but inside me there was a sacred silence. I came back but something stayed there, or maybe something came with me. The doctors were perplexed. "You were dead for more than 10 minutes, one of them said. "There is no explanation for how you came back without any after effects." I just smiled, because what they didn't know is that I came back with a mission. In the days that followed, everyone around me noticed the change. Nurses said there was something different about my eyes. Visitors cried just listening to me speak. Even skeptics fell silent at my silence. It was as if something invisible was with me, something that cannot be seen with the eyes, but that can be felt with the spirit. I was transferred home a few days later, and it was there, sitting again on the porch where it all began, that I felt the breeze of God touch my face. The same breeze I felt there, now here. I picked up my Bible, but for the first time, it seemed no longer a book, but a living letter. Each verse was now a voice. Each page, a breath. I read and cried. I cried because now understood. Jesus was not just the Savior. He was the friend, the brother, the king, and the way. And then, for the first time since the hospital, I closed my eyes and said, "Lord, I am ready. Let the mission begin." And that's how I decided to tell everything, even knowing that many would mock me, even knowing that some would call me a delusional old man or a religious fanatic. But I also knew that many would listen, that many needed to hear, because I wasn't chosen because I was special. I was chosen because I was willing to listen. And now I'm willing to speak. The truth that was revealed to me is not mine. It belongs to everyone who still believes or who wants to believe. And if you've come this far, maybe you're part of it too. Perhaps, without knowing it, you are among those faces that Jesus showed me, those who will still listen, those who are yet to awaken. Since the day I returned, something inside me changed forever. The things that once worried me no longer touch me. The fears that once paralyzed me no longer have any power. My mind carries memories that no one can prove, but my soul, it does not doubt for a second. Jesus gave me a mission, and no, it's not preaching on big stages. It's not converting crowds or building churches. It's something simpler and infinitely more profound. Awaken hearts. I started by speaking to a few neighbors, then to small groups. Soon someone suggested that I record my story, and today you are listening to this recording, not by chance, not by coincidence, but because you are part of it. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're confused, maybe you've thought about giving up. But if this message has reached you, it is because Jesus is still calling, and time is getting shorter and shorter. My last mission is this: to tell the truth. And the truth is simple. Jesus is real, he sees everything, he feels everything, and he is still waiting for you. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, where you fell, how long you've been away. He doesn't look at his past, he looks at your decision now. He sent me back to tell you that there is an unseen war going on, that hearts are being fought over, that the world is being shaken, so that the awakened can see. And I ask, with everything I have experienced, and with all the authority of someone who was there, are you ready? Ready to reconnect with faith? Ready to cleanse your soul? Ready to look inside and ask, what if it's true? Because if it is, and I tell you that, and there is no more time to postpone. The future of humanity will not be decided by major global decisions. It will be decided within each one of us. And you, yes, you can still choose the right path. If this story touched your heart, share it. Not for me, but because someone you love may need to hear this. Maybe this person is one step away from the abyss, and a simple message can save her. This is my last mission, and now, maybe it's yours. If this story spoke to you, subscribe to the channel right now, not only to follow the next videos, but to walk along with this message of faith, hope, and truth. If you made it to the end, write in the comments, "I heard the voice." This simple phrase will show that something inside you has awakened, and it can inspire others who are still searching for answers. Leave your like too, because that helps this message reach more people who, like you, may need to hear something that will transform their lives. And now don't stop here. The next video is already appearing on your screen. Click and continue this journey. Maybe your mission begins now.